everyone. Today I have with me author, actress, and sleep activist Kathleen Frazier, and she wrote the book Sleepwalker. And I am so happy to talk to you today, Kathleen. It's going to be so much fun.
Michelle, thanks so much for having me.
I didn't realize till I looked at the book that this book was released in 2015.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked because I usually go on the sites that I look for books. It's usually new releases. So maybe it was it just released as a paperback maybe?
No, not as a paperback, but there was a e-blast kind of promotion with Book Hub.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's what happened. That
I think
makes sense.
it was because it seemed like at that time, as far as timing goes, from when I heard from you. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's good because that means we get to talk about it again. You know, it can just be out there. And I don't want to screw up the name of because it's The Mysterious Makings and Recovery of a, and I'll let you say it.
Somnambulist.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when I read the description of it, I was like, that's interesting. I've never really heard of anybody going through anything quite like you did. And so when I got your, I love memoirs. Like that's one of my favorite things. So I was like, okay, well, let's read this. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God. Like I was raised by two alcoholic parents. Mm-hmm. But my parents never recovered. They both died of alcoholism. And
sorry to hear that.
So yeah, it's okay. But it was just like as I'm reading it, I'm like, wow. Like I had, when you go through something like that, everybody comes out. It's different. It's different for everybody. And so I was just so excited to see your story. I love these kind of stories, and what you went through and what I went through was a lot similar, but then not similar because the things that I went through with any kind of PTSD was panic attacks. And what I'm realizing is that as I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, my struggle with panic attacks was almost the exact same thing as your struggle because I didn't wake up, but I couldn't go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And so as I'm my fear was like, I just couldn't sleep. I was scared to sleep. I don't know. It was a weird thing. It was a very weird thing at a very weird time. And nobody knew why, I was raised in the 70s and 80s. Nobody knew any of this stuff, or could even attribute it to the fact that my parents were alcoholics. So I'm so happy that you came out with this to like shed light because I know there are people out there that are going to get so much from this book, and it doesn't have to be about sleep either.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's my hope, and so far it's been coming to fruition as far as the response and helping a lot of people. And there are a lot of people whose PTSD manifests with one of the symptoms, it's disordered sleep and insomnia. What you had falls under that umbrella, just as sleepwalking does, and night terrors or sleep terrors, they're called as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, any kind of, I don't even know why as I'm reading your book, I was like, why was I afraid to go to sleep? I don't even remember except for that when I'd wake up, I'd have a panic attack. Mm-hmm. So I think that I don't know, I was young, and I don't really remember it, but what you went through it into your 20s. I did a little bit. It was a little bit of a carryover, but anyway, so I'd like you to tell people, your story, because you can do it better than I could do. So, try to give a brief little, of what you wrote about.
Yeah, well, thank you. I wrote about the intergenerational traumas in my family as they affect sleep, in particular my own sleep. Really, it's my story. Although I come from several generations of alcoholism on both sides of my family, and my dad was a severe insomniac. He could have died from insomnia. He almost lost his thumb as a part of it when a door of a truck closed on it. He was so out of it. And my mom had these episodes at night that we just called them really bad nightmares, and then in I started to have them when I was adolescent, and they are called, now people call them night terrors or sleep terrors. But I remember some of my first memories are of her screaming in the night and running through the house. And I know when I had them, it was always this sense of this fear of somebody coming to get me, so I had to escape. Night terrors are not uncommon in young children and adolescents, but if they continue, then that's often a sign of trauma, which was the case with me. And I hid it. I just tolerated it. I had a girlfriend whose sister was older, and she would read Psychology Today, and there was an article in there about sleep disorders, and night terrors was mentioned. She said, "This is what you have." She handed it to me, and even at that was like from the first sleep clinic in the country, which was in Stanford, and they just, as far as night terrors, they were just like, you just have to tolerate it. Night terrors and sleepwalking, which is what I did for many, many years, and hid it. And I also self-medicated, which I think is not uncommon. Insomnia, and I mean, I had terrible insomnia because I was afraid to go to sleep and have these episodes, so I had, and then of course lack of sleep brings on the night terrors. So it was a terrible, circle that just was torturous, and I really almost lost my life a couple of times, and found myself in situations, I would wake up, like the beginning of the book during my 20s, there's a moment where I woke up and I was at a window. I had fled across a room trying to escape what I thought a rat had bitten my arm, and I don't know what kept me from leaping out of that window. It was on Riverside Drive in New York City. It was this big as a door, the window. There was no screen on it. It was wide open, and I was like stepping up on it when I came out of the episode, and it was my heart. It's as if you're sound asleep and you wake up in the middle of a horror movie. That's what it is. So I'm really grateful that I didn't suffer more of a severe accident. I did have an accident when I was 30. I did, as I said, self-medicate, and there's a lot of alcoholism in my family, and I did stop drinking when I was in my mid-20s, and that was so helpful in so many ways. And the sleepwalking and sleep terrors got worse because I wasn't, having any kind of, efforts even at trying to control it in that way, So I had an accident when I was 30 and broke my nose, almost lost my front tooth. My bottom front teeth went up through my lip. Concussion, and saw a doctor who knew. He was my friend's the primary care physician. They didn't call him that at that time, but he was also a cardiologist, and he was very savvy. And he said, "This is what you have, and you need to see Dr. Neil Cavey up at Columbia Presbyterian." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have the money to do that," and blah blah blah. And eventually, I just, things came together, and it was right at the time when I met my husband also, and he just was so loving to me and so tender, and I think that was a big part of my recovery as well. I went to the sleep clinic and I went on 0.25 milligrams of Clonopin, which almost acted as a anti-seizure medicine, the doctor explained. With sleepwalking, half of your brain is asleep and half of your brain is awake. That half that's awake is physical functioning. And people can do things that require tremendous agency, making full meals, sound asleep.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's common, and it's more common now with certain medicines that people are receiving for insomnia.
That was crazy as I'm reading your book, okay, that I've never experienced with any other person, okay? Like, so, we're both experiencing different PTSDs, and, I've had people that have gone through kind of what I did with panic attacks. That's kind of common,
Mm-hmm.
But when you were talking about your brother Billy with his mental health issues, well, my dad ended up in a mental institute. From alcoholism and prescription drugs, and he tried to commit suicide several times in front of me and my brother, and it was just this really, my dad was very dramatic. It was a very dramatic time in my life, and I remember going there just like you're describing it, and I'm like, okay, because I've never known anybody that has experienced what we experienced, because I didn't know anybody else who ever, it's like, so my dad was in this mental institute, and I used to go there, and basically I'm afraid I'm going to end up crazy like him because he said that I'm just like him, so, that's just what's going to be, you know what I mean? And so as I'm reading your book, and I'm like, she gets it. She knows what that feels like to be there and think, this is my future right here,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was very frightened that and all through my 20s, I just, because I knew that's when schizophrenia hit, is during your young adult life. And it was terrifying. And in a way, it felt like I was schizophrenic because I had that kind of schism at nighttime. I wasn't hearing voices during the day, but I was hearing them at night, and it was like hallucinations, moving about as if in an alcoholic blackout. And I spoke with my brother the other day. I love him so much, my brother Billy. He's just such a power of example, it's so amazing that he has lived with schizophrenia his whole life. He went 30 years without being hospitalized.
Wow.
And then they changed his psychiatric medicine because of the side effects, very severe side effects, diabetes, problems with his back, just a lot. And then he sort of, he had another suicide attempt after all those years, So they did triage and put him back on medicine networks, for his schizophrenia, and then just working the best they can with all the other physical issues. But that was so formative being in psychiatric hospitals, visiting him when I was little, and it was around the time when One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came out.
And I was going through it in the 80s. I was older. But I had just started to get the panic attacks, which in the beginning of the 80s, there was no name for it. And just like you, I just thought I was going crazy. I was I was convinced that I was going to end up like him because I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know, but I had that flight thing, it was like, be somewhere and all of a sudden you're running for a door. Like you don't even know why. You don't even know, what that is. And I remember when I first figured out, when I heard somebody say, oh, this is, the symptoms of a panic attack. And I was like, oh my God, it has a name. I have a name. And so I was, as I'm reading your book, it's like, as you're finding out, like, this has a name, this is a thing, it makes it better. It just does. Yeah. Because then you feel like, okay, so if it has a name, then there's something that can be done about this. Yeah.
Yeah. And even with names, it's like I knew when I was 17, right? 16, 17 is when I read that article in Psychology Today, and I was just like, oh, I have this. I just have to live with it, The same with the PTSD. Like it was like I was understanding what it was, and yet it took what it took for me to get help, and really sort of reach a bottom and realize, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I need help with this, So I'm so grateful that came before death by sleepwalking, because Michelle,
the thing that made me finally really come out with the book is the death of a young art designer here in New York in 2010. And it was a year I was awarded a fellowship with the Norman Mailer Colony, and I was going to write some fiction, which is what I'd been accepted for. And he, there was this article in the New York Times about him, Tobias Wong, and I thought, you know what? I cannot, hide this story because I'm ashamed of it or whatever. I have to get it out there so that maybe it'll help even one person, seek help before they hurt themselves or somebody else, And just shortly after the book came out, within a few months after the book came out, I was contacted by a family who lost a member to sleepwalking, and it was through drowning.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've been writing some about that. I'm looking to get that out in a national forum, and keep up the work of spreading the word on it. That's the thing about the book is that no one's ever really written about sleepwalking in this way,
No.
Mike Birbiglia.
Not.
No, I don't know if you know Mike Birbiglia, the comedian, the comic. He's a New York comic, very funny, really bright, and he wrote a one-man show called Sleepwalk with Me. He then wrote a book, and then Terry Gross from NPR loves his work, and helped to produce a movie based on his story, also called Sleepwalk with Me. But it's very, very, very different. It's, I don't know, it's a man's perspective. He makes fun of it the whole time through. The first thing he says is, if you think I had trauma, forget about it. You're not going to find, I didn't come from trauma. That's not what this is about. And I was just like, okay, whatever, and, it's a great story. And then at the end, really, it seems like his started from some medical trauma that he had, as best I can piece together. And, but he went through a window at a hotel while sound asleep, imagining that it was an attack of some kind, and he was fleeing or attacking back. And he was on the second floor. They almost put him up on the seventh floor.
Oh.
Wow. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just crazy. And that's that's what I love about this book, because, you can't just think it's about sleepwalking. It is about the way you cover it. It's like, I think it hits, everybody has gone through something as a child, and how we process it, it's all going to be different, but it still is like your story of how you overcame it. And that's, to me, like, it gave me, and I'm going to be 53.
Mm-hmm,
so I've raised 6 children. I've gone through 2 divorces. And there are times that when it comes back that I'm like, oh no, I'm not going down that road again. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, it's still there, but it's like you get to decide now, like, how you get to deal with it in a little bit different way. But, and then what you went through with your mom is almost exactly, like, there is a reason I know you, okay? I swear this stuff doesn't just happen, that I pick up your book and that I get to talk to you. But my mom, so both my parents died from pancreatic cancer, and it was both related to alcohol. And and like I said, they never got sober. But my mom's was so severe. She died so quickly. But she was put in hospice, and I had a very little amount of time with her. But when you talked about it, like, yeah, my dad died in the 80s, and with him, like, it was almost so easy, because he was in and out of mental institutes. He did have so many issues that it was easier to be like, okay, he's at a better place, he can breathe, that's good. But my mom's was just like, what? It comes out of nowhere, and I didn't even know she was an alcoholic, and, like, to the point that she was living off of vodka and everything. But anyway, the hospice the chapter that you talk about hospice, I was just like, you know, when it's your mom, it's like, it's so different. It was just such a different, and I love that chapter. I thought you wrote it beautifully.
Oh,
For all
thank
of
you
us
so
who've
much.
had to go through that, you know, for everybody who's had to go through that. And it's been 5 years, and I loved how you said, like, after the first year, like, you think it's going to be better. Like, you think, but it didn't get better for a while, you know? It took a while, you know?
Yeah. My day job is with Columbia University Medical Center, and I get to hear and see, so many interesting lectures. And I went to one recently about complicated grief, which after the fact I realized, oh, that's what I had, you know. I had complicated grief because I was grieving my mom, and I was sick with this other, with the PTSD and the sleepwalking and sleep terrors and insomnia. And so that was, and I was early in my recovery for my own drinking, and it was, you know, very complicated grief.
Mm-hmm. I never heard of that. That's an interesting, because I was going through a divorce while my mom was dying. And, you know, so it's like that, I know that complicated my grief, because I kept grieving things I didn't even know what I was grieving, you know?
Like, yes.
You know?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's true. And I think what happened for me, too, with my mom was I was clear enough and healthy enough to grieve. Like, it was the first time someone was leaving me, and I didn't say, F you, I'm leaving you first.
Right.
So I really was there for that process. And so it brought up all the grief of all the things I never grieved.
I do think that you're right, because I'm telling you, I did not grieve my dad, because I was happy for him to be gone. Like, he was just struggling, and it was no fun watching him just struggle all the time, you know? So definitely. And with her, you know, even when you know, because people, you know how people, well, if you're working in the medical center, like, I'm sure they say, you know, what's better, somebody dying in a car accident or somebody dying from cancer? That slow versus fast. And I don't know that there's a good answer for that, because even though I knew she was going to die, it didn't change how the impact of her actual when she passed. You know, it was still just as if somebody punched me in the gut. It's just as hard, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I identify with that. And I was in bereavement groups, you know, before she passed and after. And it just was so visceral. It was so physical. I just had to do whatever I had to do through that time. It just, I'm glad I got through it. Yeah.
Right, me too. And, you know, and people will talk about, like, well, yeah, you're older. Of course your parents are going to die. Like, of course they're going to. My mom was 63, you know, but I don't know. I still don't think there's anything like your mom dying. I really don't, now that I've experienced the difference, you know. I just think it's just that person that is your forever cheerleader, you know, the one that loves you unconditionally no matter what. Like, you know, my mom and I, we fought all the time. We fought, you know, it wasn't like we didn't fight. We fought all the time. We were like sisters in a weird way, but, you know, I had no idea. I had no idea that it would impact me the way it did. So I know now that I'm better. But I know that after the first year, I definitely was not better. It was still very difficult. So, you know.
Yeah.
But so after I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never, you put the words you put to it were just perfect. A perfect description for anybody out there, you know, that's going through it. It was, you know, it was awesome. So
thank you, Michelle. Thanks.
And you know, I go to AA meetings. Okay, I don't drink. I'm scared. I'm scared of drinking in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. I've seen them both go down that road. I've never had an issue with alcohol, but you know, when you know that it's in and it's generational and you know the things, like, to me, it's like, well, that would be stupid, you know? No need to test that out.
Right. Yeah. You know what I'd love to talk about? I'd love to talk about how the arts helped me in my health and recovery.
Oh, definitely. That's another, yes, I definitely want to hear about your, you know, acting and how that worked. And because it was crazy how, you know, you could do that Like that was the thing that you
Yeah.
could do. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And then
please.
also eventually, thank you. And then also eventually the writing, especially because of the focus of your show.
Yeah.
But it's the writing. I mean, the writing saved my life. I didn't even know I was a writer, and it's on my mind because there's that chapter about high school and when I first stepped on the stage, and this weekend I'm going to be up at my high school in Schenectady for a fundraiser for one of the men who always ran he was like the choreographer. He was our math teacher, and then he was and so it's going to be a fundraiser for the school in his honor, and I'm going to read a little bit of that chapter and then sing 2 songs from the play that really changed my life. I had not I was looking at my book here, and it's like sometimes I don't look at it for so long.
Too.
I'm like,
I have your book.
Sometimes I go so long without looking at it now. I'm like, I'm going to take it out so I remember what I wrote. And so that
the fact that you were involved in the Screen Actors Guild, I mean, that was just amazing to me. That is not easy, but you were able to actually do really well in that.
Yeah, I became. Well, I actually did not become a member of the union till after I came into recovery for the sleep, but just by a few years. But I became a member of the Actors Studio, which is what you're maybe thinking of.
Oh, right. That's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Studio.
It's really very hard to become a member of, especially at that time. I was the only woman in the group that was invited in that year, myself and a few, 4 or 5 men. Denzel Washington amongst them, wonderful actor. Denzel. Wait, excuse me, not Denzel Washington. Delroy Lindo.
Right.
I don't know if you know him. Yeah, wonderful actor. And Michael O'Keefe also, who is a wonderful actor. And some other folks, some other guys, and then myself. But this chapter in my book, Stage Sanctuary, I'm going to read a little of that this weekend, and before I sing some songs, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of people participating. But it's that kind of thing where art, I'm really looking forward to it. Where art, I think it just saves lives. I think it really does, because I think part of what was happening with me, with the sleep, was all of this energy that was not being expressed. I was not able to, for whatever reasons, express that energy during the day. I released it at nighttime, right? And so once I started to have more creative energy, there was something about that I knew I was on the right track towards, I had to just follow that. I had to follow that. And it was really what my love for theater and acting was really what helped me to put down the drink, first of all, and then also, was a big part of my health around the sleep, because I was a member of the Actors Studio, and people did start to say to me, well, why don't you write about this? My mentor is Ellen Burstyn, who is, has won the Academy Award, the Emmy, and Tony. Right? Yeah. Wonderful person. And just his suggestion to write about, I had been on the Western medicine for the Cronauer for about 6 years, and in very heavy duty therapy with a wonderful woman, Gestalt therapy, because I felt like I wanted to get it out of my body. I knew so much, but I wanted to release it from my body. And I came off of that medicine to try to conceive my daughter. And I knew that if I needed to go back on it, I would. But it was it was right then when Ellen suggested to me, why don't you write about this? You have to write about it. Everybody has something weird with sleep or knows somebody who does. And it's so watery and mysterious. You need to write about it. So I started to do this work that we do at the Actors Studio that is often misconstrued, called the method. And in particular, sense memory work, affective memory exercises. So I would either lead myself through or work with a friend, my dear friend Dina Janis, who's a wonderful director and teacher, and I would. It's not like really like remembering something. It's more getting a sense of the senses that you keep bringing your attention back to the senses of a particular instance. The best example I can give is when I was in theater school at Circle in the Square. There was a young woman who was going to be led through this exercise, and it was the first time that all of us were seeing it. And it was with Therese Hayden, who is in my book as really helping me to find health. And this young woman was supposed to cry in a scene, you know, or have a lot of it, that emotion in that way. And she felt like she couldn't. So she did this affective memory of an exercise from 7 or more years in the past. And she chose her mother's funeral. So she thought, okay. So the teacher led her through, and rather than, well, did you feel sad? You know, what's going on? You know, the actor sits in a chair, closes their eyes, does this long relaxation exercise. And then with their eyes closed, the person, the teacher in this case, led her through, what are you wearing? You know, all in present tense, like, what do you see? Well, I see the door to the funeral parlor, or whatever, you know. What do you smell? I smell the flowers, or what's going on? And then the teacher can see, you know, because they were adept at this, when these moments come that it's like gold. So she said, what's going on now? She said, oh my. And the teacher said, what do you feel? What are you wearing? And the girl said, my shoes. And she just burst out crying. She said, my shoes are so tight. And like, it was like the sense of, I just got a chill just remembering that even, but the sense of she could go to that moment. She could try to get a sense of the tightness of those shoes, and the emotion would come, you know, of what was associated with that moment. And it's just so amazing. I just am so amazed at us human beings, you know. And so I would do these exercises about my early life and my sleep. I would go back and, you know, revisit these experiences. And of course, how do you remember sleepwalking if you didn't remember it? Well, I would get a sense of what I was wearing when I went to bed. I would let my imagination go. Sometimes I would have glimpses of things, because towards the end of my sleepwalking, but all through most of my sleepwalking and night terrors, I would wake up during them, or I would remember them like a couple of days later. I'd be like, oh my God, I sleepwalked, you know. And so there's some kind of a witness somewhere within us, you know. And I would just sort of re-experience them and then write it down first person. And people at the Actors Studio were like, oh my God, this is amazing. You're a writer. And I was like, what? You know? And Vivian Nathan, who was one of the first members of the Actors Studio, just encouraged me. She said, just keep doing what you're doing. Do the exercise, write it down, come on in and read it out loud, you know. And this was in the mid-90s, late 90s, like that. And there were like 2 literary agents kind of fighting over me at that time. And one of them actually sent some work to a wonderful editor not against my wishes, but I was like, I'm not ready for this. And she had very favorable things to say about it. But I couldn't put, I was at a place with my health that it was so inextricably linked to my art and vice versa, that I couldn't put the work out. I was still too vulnerable. And so I turned to fiction. Of course, all my protagonists are sleepwalkers. It's very interesting and funny. And not funny, but, you know.
Right.
And I almost sold a lot of my own story as a young adult book. And then it didn't happen. And I'm really grateful that it didn't, because when it came time to screw my courage to the sticking post and tell my own story, all that material wasn't retold in some fictionalized way, you know,
Right.
I could really just dive into the genre. So I wrote an essay. I took a class with a woman in New York. This is in like 2010, right, when Tobias Wong hung himself, most probably while sleepwalking. And I took a class with a woman named Sue Shapiro. Have you ever heard of her through your
No,
interviews?
I haven't. No.
Oh, she's just wonderful. She teaches at the new school, and she has these classes where privately also, which is what I did, and it's essays. She really teaches people how to write essays that are publishable, and she has a big knack for knowing how things should land and where they should go. So the first class that I took with her was like an afternoon seminar, and there was a wonderful editor from Now, and then there was a wonderful literary agent, Ryan Fisher Harvage. But before they came into the room, and they were like there for the second half of the day, she went around the room and she had people tell their stories and how we were going to pitch them to these other two people. And it came to me, and I told her about myself, and she was like, "And you're married?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "And when did you meet your husband?" And I was like, "Well, like right when I had the accident from sleepwalking." And she said, "This is a romantic story, you know, but your husband really helped you to recover from sleepwalking." And I was like, part of me was like, "Well, no, he didn't. I mean, I love him, but you know." I didn't even really get that, you know. And then it was like, oh my God, that's so true. So it's really a love story as well. But what happened was I wrote this essay, and I submitted it first to Modern Love at the time, and it didn't get picked up. And then I submitted it to Psychology Today. I'll talk about full circle, right? Because that's where I read about them when I was a teenager, the night terrors. And they bought it, and they have a section called 2-Minute Memoir, and they publish 6 times a year. So it was great to land there. It was a perfect fit. The writer before me was Augustine Burroughs. I was like, that's good company. And yeah, and my agent read it and Googled me, found me, and we started working together on the proposal, and the book sold, you know, and it was just like, wow. I say this to writers, I say it to all artists, get a website, even if a rudimentary one, you know, even if it's just so that people can see how to reach you, like it has a contact email or something, you know, so that, because if I didn't have that, I don't know if she would have found me, you know. I suppose she could have through the magazine, but who knows if she would have made that extra effort, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that, you know, and that's what I wanted to get into was the fact that your husband did help you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know, here I am 53. I've known a lot of men, okay? And I was like, wow, I mean, talk about the right person at the right time of your life.
Yeah. Yes.
You know? Because I don't know, you know, in my life, I don't know too many men that could have, you know, done what he did, and I am in awe of him. So
yeah,
so, you know,
yeah.
And I'm sure everybody who reads this book will come out of it in awe of him because, you know, they're like, wow, look what he did. I mean, it's crazy. It was so, and the fact that you never did right before, that's what I kept wanting to, you know, express, is that it brought up all these things in me because it was written so beautifully. Okay. Like I can become very numb to a lot of things, and I'm sure you can too. It's like you read an article and you're like, I can't relate, whatever. Even if it's almost the exact same thing that you've done, you know, that you've gone through, if it's not put in the right way, you're just dismiss, you know. But when I was reading your book, I was like, I remember, I started having memories. I started experiencing those things over again, and it was awesome, you know. I mean, not in a bad way. It was in a very good way, you know.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think of an expression that my mom used to say that makes my heart sing. But for real, like it just feels so wonderful to have you express your identification and appreciation in that way, Michelle. I love writing, you know. I just and I love reading, you know, and I love that human connection. It's one reason why I'm really excited to be back up at my high school this weekend, because that's the first time that I really remember it was stepping on that stage, and that sort of current of spirit, for lack of a better word, energy that went from the band down through the audience, through the baseboard to the, you know, under the stage, like where they stored the folding chairs, you know, up and through me and out again. Like it just was. I can see why theater came from religion, you know. It was like so tied back in the Greek and Romans, and it just was, wow, really.
Yeah, did you feel like what I kept hearing what you say when I was reading it, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was almost like when you got on stage, you didn't have to be you. You got to be something else. So you got to be, you know, like everything else just kind of fades in the background and you're not paying attention. You know what I mean? You're paying attention to what's right in front of you, which releases something in your brain, because I just believe it does, especially with, you know, a PTSD. Like you were focusing on something that wasn't part of your pain. And therefore you could, you know, it was like it took you to another place in your brain and to experience. You know?
That's right. It's very, very much like meditation. It's very much writing. I feel it when I write, when I get to that place. And it's and with acting, it seems like you're being someone else, but you're right. You're tricking your brain and your body and your spirit into being more of yourself, because it's like that very thing that connects us as humans is what gets actified, you know.
Right.
And it's like I was describing with the sense memory work, right? So you're not thinking, oh, I felt sad, or I feel sad, or like in this moment I feel this or that, you know. It's what was I wearing, you know. We'll get a sense of, see if I can. And Lee Strasberg, who, you know, ran the studio for many years, he used to say, you'll be amazed what happens when you just make the effort. And I find that to be true in so many things in life. Just you know, just making the effort, and you know,
just showing
up and surrounding myself with other people who are making the effort, you know, so that when I can't make the effort, I can call them and they can tell me how they did that day, or encourage me to make it, or remind me that I'm making the effort enough so that I'm not, you know, lying dead somewhere under a tree, you know.
Well, I look at you as a hero, because I think it does take great courage. You know, the people that I've read books that have been so vulnerable about what they went through, it takes so much courage to be able to do that in healing themselves, and then in sharing, so that perhaps out there someone else is getting healed and they're not scared, and they're like, oh, there is help, and there is, like, you're giving hope to, you know, and like I said, not just sleepwalking. You're giving hope to anybody who's having any kind of PTSD in their life, and that they didn't even, like, I did not realize until I read your book that my PTSD could have been from my parents. I did not think it was. It's really weird. Like, I don't know, 53 years, you know, I thought it was that's just the way I am. But when I read it, I was like, I wonder if it was because my parents were alcoholics. And my dad tried to commit suicide all the time. I'm wondering if that's part of my PTSD.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, I mean, it's not uncommon to have that, you know, denial, because the whole society is raised on it. You know, I mean, it's just part of, so ingrained in us, you know.
Right. Well, you start to, especially when you're little, you're like, you mean everybody's parents aren't like that? Like, you mean this isn't, because it's your norm, so you don't know, you know. But then it's not it's not normal enough that you don't go around talking about it either. It's not, you know, in a weird way, but not in a, you know, you think everybody has their own thing, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got the sense from your book that that's kind of what you went through, too. You don't want to go around telling people, you're like, okay, this is my norm, but it's kind of weird, and I don't think anybody else does this, so,
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm just like looking at it, I'm thinking about like this tying into what you're saying, and also my husband, his gentleness and the sense of, oh, that's not the way other people are. When I was, we've been together for a while, and we were talking. I'm just going to read a paragraph, if I may.
Sure.
This is after Mark and I are, together and not married yet, but I did have episodes, and he met them with sensitivity and patience. One night we lay on his mattress. He donated the rest of his bed to Goodwill. I was having trouble because I couldn't be up high on a bed, I needed to be on the floor. I was having trouble falling asleep, and we told each other the stories of our day. Zach had thrown a tantrum. Zach was 2 when I met Mark, and now he's 29 and going to get married soon.
Oh.
He'd been exhausted, Zach, and had flung himself flat out on the sidewalk on the corner of 96 and Broadway, crying miserably. What did you do? I asked, expecting him to say he'd lost control and spanked Zach or yelled at him in front of the crowd that had stopped to gawk. I picked him up and held him. You're treating him like a baby, I blurted. Mark paused and looked sadly at me. Kathleen, he is a baby. I burst into tears of apology and shame. Mark gave me the same reproach he'd given Zach. He held me heart to heart. Soon mine calmed to his steady beat, and I got it in that moment, how I'd been calloused, raised on rough. I was 30 and an old dog. I worried that I was too far gone to learn new tricks. I'm so grateful I wasn't too far gone to learn new tricks. I don't think anybody is. You know what I mean?
I don't think anybody is too, but when I read that, the thing that came to me is that I had 6 children, okay, and young, and I was in my 20s and 30s. But what I used to think, and they did not have perfect lives, but because they had better lives than I had, I did have an expectation of, but look at your life. Like, it's so much easier. Like, what are you complaining about? Like, I did have a hardness about me that I didn't even, and when I was reading that and, hearing your words through it, I was like, I was just like her. I did think that way. I know it, especially with my older children, I did expect more, and it because I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why, but I did feel the exact same way.
It goes back to that same, we come from the Puritans. That's where we come from, That's where we come from. That's where we come from. And it's very much a part of and a lot of people are not even conscious of it,
it's like we're tough. We're tough. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We're tough.
Spare the rod, spoil the child, all of that.
Yeah. So, But
and where does that cross over to trauma then? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing is with families that like ours, it was, my mom said to me before she passed, I'm so sorry. We had no idea what we were doing. Like she really got it, and I think that was such a beautiful gift to receive her amends in that way, because so many people, they don't have that experience.
Yeah. I don't know that my mom ever, unfortunately, just because she wasn't sober, you know what I mean? Her brain was not, But I know, she was only 17 when she had me, so she was young. And I know that's the thing, as you grow older and you have children, it's like, I know that they did not set out to do that. That was not a plan,
Right, of course.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So as you can grow older and step back and see that, you're like, okay, I know that. And, everybody's just doing the best they can. But
everybody's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
I love that line, Michelle, and I think it's true.
Yes. Yes. So I'm so happy that you discovered yourself as a writer, and I'm so happy you wrote this book, and I hope you do. I hope you continue. I know there are more stories, and that's what's great about memoirs, is that it isn't over. Like, there's still stories. There's always stories, Yeah.
And I just before we part, I just want to mention this program that I'm in at Columbia University.
Definitely.
I'm getting my I'm getting my Master of Science in Narrative Medicine, which I describe as the intersection between art and health and social justice. And also as I'll be equipped to teach physicians and other healthcare practitioners, but really people from all walks of life, the fine but lost art of bedside manner, or the ability to close listen through learning how to close read and and write, in response and be in communication with each other that way.
Well, and then that's another reason why you're a hero, because, women, especially women like me, it's like you raise your children and you turn around and you're 53 and you're like, do I have anything left to contribute to this, world? And you're finding things, and it's amazing, because I love talking to women like you that, it's like I'm going to school. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep teaching. I'm going to keep writing. It's so inspiring.
Well, thank you. And right back at you. I love your program. I've been listening to your, recordings, and it's just such a wide array of different kinds of people and writers, and it's wonderful. It's really a service. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love talking to people. And like I said, I know there's a reason that I got to talk to you, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I came across your book. And they all just seem heaven sent. Every book that gets sent my way, there's a reason. And there was definitely one for yours. So I really appreciate that.
You.
And please keep in touch. I will have, just so everybody knows, there will be lots of links below where you can get the book, where you can find you, where, everything about you. I will put all your links. And
wonderful.
So people can keep up with, whatever you're doing in the next chapter. And I definitely want to hear about it. So please keep us in touch.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, and I just want to put a shout out there to anybody, both for two writers, but especially to people if they're struggling with sleep in any way and they want to contact me, to please do so. I'm happy to support anybody that I'm able to.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, because I think there isn't anything worse to have trouble with ever, actually. And you had a good line in your book about it's about letting go. And I was like, I never thought about it like that, because you have to let go to sleep.
Yeah.
People take sleep for people who don't have sleep issues, take it very for granted, because it is a letting go. And I loved how you put that. And it's the most like you said, people, your dad, bad things can happen if people are not getting the right amount of sleep. So it's,
so true. Yeah.
There's a service out there for this, and I know a lot of people are going to be blessed by it. So
thank you, Michelle.
Yes. So anyway, keep us in touch, and we will keep in touch with you and keep writing. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Okay. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Take care.